It's another blast from the past with this comic book unboxing. Hey there, today I have an unboxing video, and in this video I'm going to open yet another order that has been sitting around for several months. In fact, probably about 7-8 months now. It was an order that I placed with Mile High Comics back in January of 2022, and what I really find interesting about these older orders is seeing if the values really hold up after this long. I mean, back in January 2022, we were still riding the highs of the comic book market. So a lot of the prices were up, and not just, I mean, it's relative, right? So the values were up, but the cost to acquire these books were up as well. And what I really enjoy is certainly taking a look at the actual books that I purchased at the time and actually having them, in my hand and ready to add to my collection. But I also enjoy going back and doing kind of a retrospective on it, right? So it's like a 6-month later sort of analysis on whether or not it was worth it to place an order like this. And at the time, Mile High still had that 60% off coupon in effect that they discontinued, but then they brought back in a different form. I think right now the code word is San Diego. In January, it was still Thanksgiving or something like that. But even after applying that discount, but it's interesting to me to see if the cost to acquire the books, even with that coupon, if it holds up over time. Now, all of these books that I purchased from Mile High, I purchased in near mint condition as advertised in near mint. And so that's also part of the whole discovery of all of this, is figuring out if the books are truly in near mint or in that high grade. But I can only find out by opening this order up, taking a look at the comics and seeing what condition they're in. So let's get to it. All right, here is that order that I placed with Mile High Comics. I know it's kind of small, but here it is, January 2022, January 21st to be exact. And I always choose FedEx when I check out. Once you unlock free shipping, you're simply paying for insurance. And as additional insurance, I always choose FedEx and not USPS. It is your choice. I think if you do not select FedEx, it defaults to USPS. But it's no additional charge. So I always choose FedEx. It always arrives in this nice FedEx padded envelope. So I'm going to go ahead and open this and get to the comics. Okay, here's the order. It's a 6-book order, and let's get to it. First book is Nova #1, and the significance of this book is that this is the first solo-titled series featuring Sam Alexander as Nova. I pick up this book a lot, as often as I can, wherever I can, because we know that Nova is going to be a project. It would not surprise me if in Guardians of the Galaxy, either Guardians 3 or even the Guardians Holiday Special, if we get some sort of Nova announcement or appearance, or we may even get an announcement before then. And in the Marvel .1, we've got the first appearance of Sam Alexander, but this being his first solo series, if you can't get his first appearance, if you can't get the first origin or some other significant book, a great collectible is always the first issue of their first solo series. And Mile High typically has this book in stock, so I like to pick it up from them. Next is Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic #3. I am a big fan of the Star Wars Dark Horse comics. I believe that for the longest time, the Dark Horse Star Wars were dollar bin type fodder. And in doing so, these were often beat up or just mistreated in some way. So anytime I can find these in high grade, I like to pick them up. This one is not a mega key or anything. It's not the first Darth Revan or anything like that. It does have a first appearance, which a lot of Star Wars books do. And so just kind of by default, if you pick up an older Star Wars book, it'll probably have a first appearance in there. In this one, it is the first appearance of a character named Jarrell, who's a fighter with limited use of the Force. Not a super well-known character, is the character in Star Wars canon. It doesn't really matter for me. Again, Dark Horse Star Wars, not trying super hard to put a full run of Knights of the Old Republic together, but I'm slowly collecting and gathering all of the issues around it and have a pretty good run of this series. Another one that I like to pick up, kind of because of just how ridiculous it is, but this is Star Wars number 8, and it's the first appearance of Jackson, which is that character right there. Yep, the green rabbit with the giant ears. There's something about that character and the fact that he is so ridiculous that it would not surprise me if, with all of the different Star Wars projects that are coming out, he doesn't make some sort of appearance, even if it's an animated form. And when that happens, this book is going to take off just because it's so silly. It's just, it's like it fits in the Star Wars universe, and then it absolutely does not. And again, this is a near mint copy. The spine looks to be pretty good. In fact, I'd like to take it out of the bag here and take a look. It's kind of it's a weird, you can almost hear it. It's not even like a poly bag, and it's not Mylar either. It's just kind of a clear, flimsy bag. But it looks really, really nice. So I just wanted to take a chance and take a look at it. A little bit of a non-color breaking spine issue, a little bit of dimpling. Again, probably really worth a really nice steam and press, just a humidity treatment there on that, right along the spine. There's a couple of tiny little ticks, but I'm after this book in a 9.8. It's severely miswrapped, but miswrapped around the back cover. It really doesn't even look to me like we need any sort of treatment or cleaning on the back. It looks really, really nice. Corner up there, it looks like it's just maybe slightly, just barely either torn or just has a little bit of a softening up on that corner. This bottom corner, it looks strong. Maybe just a slight tear. It's hard to tell. Yeah, no, that's a tear. So they both have just a little bit of bindery tearing or corner softening down in there. So not much I can do with that. So I feel like even with a really strong press, it might max out at a 9.6. But because that spine is so clean, couple of just, gosh, right there is your two color breaking spine ticks. So, okay, getting back to the books. Batman 436. This is the first appearance of Tim Drake. I was on a run with Mile High Comics where I was buying one issue of this book and the next book in just about every order. And honestly, I'm grateful that this was the last order that I have where this book is in there, because I can never seem to get this book in a 9.8 from Mile High. Now this one, of course, as I say that, looks pretty good, and now I have to open it and see. But it's one of these where the raw value is really, really low, but the graded value is really high. And maybe it is just because it's hard to get this book in a high grade. But this book, though, at a quick first glance, looks to be possibly that candidate. You can see the all of that black ink. Yeah, that's not helping matters when you're looking to get this book in a high grade or in a 9.8 candidate. But this one looks to be it, and I've got to actually put the book down because I'm starting to sweat. And usually when I start to sweat, that's a good thing, because I realize, okay, this is a 9.8 candidate. Right now, though, I would give it a 9.6. It does have a little bit, I'm going to try and angle it in the light, like right there on the edge. That needs to be pressed out. It's just a little bit of a ding, almost like a finger bend sort of right there. And then up at the top as well, and this corner right there. Those are absolute definite pressable defects. So I would run this through the press and probably set this aside as a 9.6. Although now that I look at it a little bit more, right in there, has kind of the same right up there. Same thing up in the, just basically the entire top corner. Get a little closer right there. So right at the top, additional finger bend, and right on the edge. So to me, this is a 9.4 that could be pressed into a 9.8. because that spine is beautiful and intact completely. So very happy to finally get this in a 9.8 candidate. I'd probably have to add up what I paid for all of the other issues that landed somewhere between an 8 and a 9.2, but this book was relatively affordable and definitely a book that I've had my eye on for a long time as one of those regular value picks where I know I could just continually buy that book raw from Mile High, and it has a really nice graded 9.8 potential. So I'll show you the values here just in a moment after I get through these books, where you can see what I'm talking about in terms of what I paid for the books and then comparing them to fair market value and the value when they are graded. So the other book that I mentioned, this is Tales of the Jedi #1. This kind of was up and down in terms of comic book speculation. People saw the logo Tales of the Jedi on some sort of staff giveaway or some sort of announcement, and they immediately thought that there was going to be a series based on this. And what ended up happening is Disney announced that they're going to be putting together an anthology series, and I believe it's even animated, and it's just going to carry the name Tales of the Jedi, but it's not based on this series. So the spec is pretty much just completely cooled off on this book. But for me, I still appreciate the book. Again, a dark horse Star Wars. The other thing that's really tough, and I'm not going to open this one because I don't have gloves, and I would sweat all over this book and get fingerprints, is this semi-glossy cover just will get destroyed by oily human hands, sweaty palms like mine, because that's part of why this book is difficult to get in a high grade, is you're just asking to get fingerprints and other smudges on it. So I'm going to leave it in the bag. But Tales of the Jedi #1, at least at the time, was a pretty strong value pick. You could consistently get over $100 for this book in a 9.8. We'll take a look at the values here in a second to see if it's held up on that. The last book is really interesting to me. This is the first copy that I've picked up, and it's Star Wars Mace Windu, Jedi of the Republic #5. So you're looking at it going, okay, some Jedi. Is that Obi-Wan up there? Not sure. Maybe. Is that Kit Fisto down there? No, I don't know. Probably Mace Windu. Yep, that's him. It's his series. He's front and center. He's battling some robots and stuff. So looks to be like a nice, fun side story adventure featuring these characters. And then lo and behold, in one panel, Ahsoka Tano appears, and it's considered to be her first appearance in the Star Wars comic canon universe. With Star Wars The Clone Wars comic book series, based off the animated series, or side stories that's semi-related to the animated series. Is it canon? Is it not? This is Ahsoka appearing in the Marvel Star Wars comic book universe. That's where it gets a little weird. Like I said, I'm a big fan of the Dark Horse Star Wars series, and it's like, do the Dark Horse stories count towards Star Wars canon? Is it only Marvel because Disney owns Marvel? A while ago, all of the Dark Horse were designated as non-canon. It gets a little confusing. Frankly, I don't really care. I'm not one of those comic book collectors that's really going to debate you to death and die on a hill as far as this is the book to own, this is not the book to own. For me, especially as a collector / hoarder, I feel like if you love a character, you should probably try and get as many books as you can of significance. So if you're an Ahsoka collector, definitely get her first appearance, her second appearance in Star Wars, the Clone Wars comic book series. But I would also say you'd want to grab this one too, because it's her first cameo, first appearance technically, in the Marvel Star Wars canon. So I've got her second appearance in Dark Horse, and now I have her first appearance in Marvel, and love the character, especially with the Ahsoka series in development currently. I think these books, although they're cooled off right now, the Ahsoka books are going to come back around eventually. So let me show you what I paid for these books, compare the values against today's fair market values, so you'll see what I paid for them back in January and see how they line up with today's fair market values. All right, here we are with that order that I placed with Mile High Comics back on January 19th, 2022. The total cost of the order, I was charged $224.20 to acquire these 6 books. I did not have to pay for shipping, and there was no tax, but I did have to pay $7 in insurance for the order, and I distributed that $7 across the 6 books when determining the total cost. I like to do that. I like to bake in any additional costs or fees into the books themselves so that I can look back and really see what it cost me to acquire the book. So adding up the new cost for each book, I have $224.20, which matches the amount on the invoice, so I know my math is correct. Now, if I compare the fair market value against what I paid here in column AA for raw books, you'll see that I'm down $66.20. And the thought behind that is I should have been able to acquire these books at better prices today than what I paid for in the past. Now, I would argue if you're buying from Mile High Comics, they're sort of in their own universe. They're sort of creating not a price guide, absolutely not, but they have their own reasons for pricing books the way that they do, and you can learn more about that online and listen to Chuck explain it. And I won't get into all of that right now. But my argument here is whether it's 6 months ago or 6 months in the future, I don't really see their prices changing all that much. Unless books appear on certain top 10 lists and things like that, then they'll go back sort of almost retroactively and raise and adjust some prices. But I would imagine it would still cost you roughly the same to buy these books from Mile High today. The only difference is availability. You're probably not able to pick up a couple of these books from Mile High. So it's really not necessarily about price evaluation, but just evaluating and seizing the opportunity. And with Mile High, I never really count on a big raw book value add anyway. It's really more about acquiring books in high grade for that graded book potential. So a $66.20 loss if I were just to turn around and flip the books. Now, the one book that has held up is the Star Wars Mace Windu number 5, that first cameo of Ahsoka in the Marvel Comics canon. I paid $41.17 for that book, and it is currently valued at $66 raw by cover price. So all of my fair market values are provided here by cover price. Now, if I were to grade these books and assign a 9.4 to them because they're all quote-unquote near mint, then we can see that they all do actually have value when they're graded 9.4. However, when you compare the cost to acquire the book and you add in all of the additional fees to get the book graded, but what you can see here in column AB is that even if I turned around and got this entire order graded and they came back at 9.4, it's almost $100 loss. So that's the other thing that's baffling me a little bit right now is I typically try to buy books in high grade where just in case they were a 9.4, they had a bit more value to reduce my risk. These, unfortunately, do not have that, and it really put my money at risk. So this is kind of a bad example at this point of an order where you're really banking on these books coming back as a 9.8 or maybe even a 9.6 to possibly break even or add value to your collection. That same book, that Mace Windu number 5, in a 9.4 graded according to GPA and cover price, it's actually worth less than it is raw. And I don't know if that's because of the lack of data or the scarcity of the book. I'm not exactly sure. It could be because since it was released in 2017, the raw book value, it's expected to be higher. And this is where the changes that Cover Price made recently, they're kind of messing with me right now because maybe they expect raw books to be 9.8. I don't know. But the numbers there are a little strange. Everything else looks to be what you would expect. Batman 436 raw is only $5 now, and I paid $15 for it in high grade. And even at that cost, if I were to get it graded and it came back a 9.4, which I believe that book specifically would because of the finger bends and other creasing, it's a $40 book, but you still wouldn't even get your money back. If you bought it at $5, you would, but here, a loss of $7.85 on that book. And Star Wars Tales of the Jedi number 1, also taking a hit from the value perspective for all of those reasons that I mentioned earlier. a loss of $23.85 if I were to grade that, and it came back a 9.4. So this order looks terrible. It really does. It looks like, what was I thinking? What am I doing? I could have just waited. But this is kind of an example of what's happened in the market, right? Things are sliding. I mean, $224 for these books, that's a lot of money and a big gamble for me when a lot of these books are not super strong, well-known keys. For that kind of money, I could have invested it in something a bit more recognizable. But here's why I do it, and it's part of the fun, is I'm going to flip the values in my grade to 9.8, and this is exactly why. So I'm not saying that these books are 9.8. It's possible that they have 9.8 potential, and I really do take the risk and I gamble on that potential. The ceiling for an order of these 6 books, if they were all in 9.8, is $965.69 if I were to send all of these books into CGC and got a 9.8 on all of them. So when I factor in the risk calculation, and probably at the time, the 9.4s of these books, they had to have had a bit of a stronger value to really force me to pull the trigger on an order like this. But also looking at the 9.8, the values, they may too have dipped since I placed the order in January, but still very, very strong. Star Wars number 8 at $666 in a 9.8. I don't know if that book is really going to get it because of the 2 corners and the 2 tiny hairline color breaking spine ticks. Even in a 9.6, though, if we change it, it's got a value of $115, which at least puts me in the positive or kind of a break-even situation. But that was part of the gamble, was to see if it's possible, kind of like the Batman 436 that had suppressible defects. That one is holding at $198 in a 9.8. So there's something about that book. I mean, if you just look at that for a second, look at column U and column V, $5 fair market value as reported by Cover Price, and then $198. That sort of gap, that's exactly what I look for. So if I were to press out those creases and send it in and land it in a 9.8, a huge value add of over $150 into my collection. All of these books that you can see are over $100 in a 9.8, which, you know, when I'm reviewing the data and going through it and analyzing it, a lot of times I look for the $100 and above, and it's kind of easy for me to eyeball in a spreadsheet. It sticks out just a little bit more than books valued at less than 100. So even visually, I can just kind of see those books that pop. So as I'm going through the books that are available on Mile High and I'm referencing my spreadsheets, what I'm trying to do, again, look for books that have a price more associated with the CGC 9.4 with that 9.8 potential. And I often will compare it to fair market value as well. So just kind of looking at all of those things and just kind of putting that into the formula in my head to help kind of identify which books I want to pick up. Because regardless of the market, regardless of prices going up and down, there will naturally be a decrease in high grade comic books from past eras. As collectors like me seek out these books, buy them, grade them, put them away in personal collections, the availability of these sorts of books out in the market, regardless of who is saying which books are in demand and which books are valuable, that can be debated until the end of time. But there's going to be fewer and fewer of these books available in high grade. And of course, I would have loved to have waited 6 months and still acquire these books and pay a lot less. Absolutely. So I do feel a little foolish that it looks like I overpaid for these books, but I am 100% satisfied and happy and glad that I have these high grade quality comic books to add to my collection. Thanks for watching. Happy collecting, and see you next time.